Hello everyone and welcome back to Navis Nobilite. First, I'd like to welcome all of our new subscribers and new people in the Discord. Thank you all so much for coming over. You're really helping the community grow and you're really helping keep the hobby alive. Thank you all so much. Now, today I am going to be finishing up with the Book of the Void, number 1, on the fleet that is very much my baby, because a long time ago, back in Warp Rift 15, a guy by the name of Mitch and a very important guy by the name of Graham McNeil decided to make a really interesting concept based off of a fleet in the Fulgrim books known as the Diasporex. And a while ago, before everything went completely to hell with Battlefleet Gothic, I asked for permission to take the original fleet list that was in the Warp Rift. I asked the author, can I take this and run with it? Can I expand it, make the fleet better, make the fleets more interesting, and work a little bit on the background? And I got the permission to do so. I created the very first Book of the Void way back, several years ago, almost a decade, that expanded upon the Diasporics then, and now with Book of the Void, the new Book of the Void, and the first of the series of Book of the Voids, I decided to heavily expand upon the Diasporics, make them a far more robust fleet, far greater depth, bringing the opportunity for everybody to come together and make a really excellent full-sized fleet with ships that you can actually find and 3D print and play with all of them. And I want to give a very special thank you to Italian Moose, who worked with me very closely in making these fleets, giving them a very good aesthetic, giving them a excellent series of miniatures that can be customized and can be put on a table and be visibly and obviously a Battlefleet Gothic fleet. Italian Moose did excellent work. I can't thank him enough for all of the work that he's done. So, let's begin with the Diasporex fleet rules, and then we're going to go on to the ships themselves. First things first, my ship is my home. The Diasporics view their vessels as their homes. They live on them their entire lives, so they know more about defending those homes than most other fleets do. The Diasporics vessels gain a +1 to the dice roll when fighting defensive boarding actions. So if you are boarded by somebody else, you gain a +1. Archaeotech and Xenotech upgrades. Diasporic vessels often have a pair of optional upgrades to them, an Archaeotech and a Xenotech one. Each vessel may choose to take one of these upgrades. No vessel may have both unless explicitly stated otherwise. This happens mostly in campaigns for vessels having both upgrades. So if you're playing one-off games, pick one or the other. If you are in a campaign, you will have an opportunity to occasionally give them both. Keep the secrets. Diasporics cannot make teleport attacks or initiate boarding actions. If a Diasporix vessel is reduced to 0 hits in a boarding action, you may make a leadership roll. If it succeeds, the vessel instantly suffers a plasma drive overload. Ultimately, what this is showing is the Diasporics are very jealous and very unwilling to give up their vessels. They are not willing to share the technology that they have been keeping secret for the last 30,000 years. So the Diasporics have a very similar rule to the All is Lost rule in the Tyrannid book. And it can be tactically handy if someone boards you, kills you, and then you suddenly blow the ship up and take out a whole bunch of enemy ships along with it. On the run, when fighting against Adeptus Mechanicus, any Hulk Diasporix vessel is worth 200 victory points. Any against the Imperial Navy is worth 150. In these matches, Diasporix may target their own Hulks for destruction in an attempt to deny these victory points. In effect, these two factions are hunting their ships because they're loaded with fancy technology. So, if you're playing against these two factions, make aware to deny enemy victory points as best you possibly can, because you can lose very quickly against these factions, despite them being a bitter rival of them. Fleet Masters. Diasporix vessels roll for leadership on the following table, 7, 8, 9, rather than the standard leadership table, and the Nomad fleets have an attack rating of 2. Now, onto the vessels of the Diasporics. Now, you will find that a lot of these vessels correspond to vessels in the Chaos list. That is because the Diasporics were made for you to purchase a Diasporix fleet and use it as a Chaos fleet alternative. So you don't have to buy two fleets of very similar vessels, very similar to the AdMech. So if you want, you can take your AdMech ships and easily proxy them as Imperial Navy and vice versa. And when I expanded upon the fleet list, that is exactly what I intended to do. It is in effect a pseudo chaos AdMech version for chaos, if that in that regard. So, starting with the Jupiter class command battleship at 330 points. One thing you're going to find, the battleships and pretty much every ship in the fleet, with a few minor exceptions, are rather undergunned and low pointed. This is made up for with your upgrades. These will increase the point cost of your fleet and make them far more technologically viable. But alone, they're going to not compete so well with a lot more of the more modern vessels in the game. Now, the Jupiter class command battleship, what are we looking at? It's a standard battleship 12 hull with 20 centimeter speed, so above average battleship speed, 45-degree turn, 4 shields, 5 up armor, and 4 turrets. It's equipped with port and starboard weapons batteries at 60 centimeters at strength 6 left and right, port and starboard launch bays for fighters only, a total of 4 squadrons, port and starboard lance bays at strength 2 at 60 centimeters, and a dorsal weapon battery at strength 6. Front, left, right, and a prow torpedo salvo of 8. So you can look at this ship and you kind of look at it and go, it's not bad. It has a strength 12 salvo. It's rather undergunned, but it is flexible with having torpedoes and fighters. But if you come down here to its upgrade options, you can either take the Xenotech upgrade for enhanced weapons batteries to increase the dorsal weapons battery strength to 10 for an additional 20 points, making this a $350 point battleship, and your dorsal salvo becomes strength 16, which is significantly more powerful. The Archaeotech upgrade is advanced shield generators. Increase the shield value of this vessel to 5 for 25 points. So right there, you go from having a rather mediocre battleship to an incredibly difficult to kill one, and it makes it a good support battleship with its launch bays and torpedoes. While it may not be the strongest firepower, it's still good enough to cause some hurt. Ultimately, it's a cheap option for a command battleship, and you'll see what I mean by command battleship later. Now, the Saturn-class fleet carrier at 350 points. What do we get? Another same effective stat block as the Jupiter, with the exception of 5 turrets, like all carriers. It has port and starboard weapon batteries at strength 10, a dorsal lance battery at strength 2, front, left, right. So, again, rather undergunned. And it has a prow launch deck of strength 8 for assault boats, bombers, and fighters. Now, this is one of the few vessels that can actually get assault boats in this fleet. So that right there is a fun little advantage. Now, let's look at its Xenotech and Archaeotech upgrades. Now, Xenotech upgrade dorsal armament, increase the dorsal lance strength to 3 for 20 points. And the Archaeotech upgrade, add a strength 6 front-facing prow torpedo launcher for 30 points, making this vessel far more effective in combat and a lot more than just basically a cheap fleet carrier at battleship scale. It is overall another really good command vessel, but its firepower is kind of in the mid-range, even when upgraded. Now, moving on to the next command vessel, the Neptune-class command carrier. It is a relatively standard cruiser hull, cruiser with 8 hits, 20 centimeter speed, 45-degree turns, 2 shields, 5 up armor, and 3 turrets. It has a launch capacity 3 fighters, bombers, and assault boats on each side, and 2 60-centimeter dorsal lances. Anyone who's played with the Styx will see a very familiar sight, with the exception of the lacking of the weapons batteries. So what are we getting without, and it's a little bit slower too, at only 20 centimeters. But what are we getting out of it? Well, it has a gigantic sensor dome. Ships within 15 centimeters of the vessel, and the vessel itself ignore the effects of mimic engines and the column shifts due to shadow fields and hollow fields. When firing through blast markers, the vessel within the zone ignore the right column shift. So this is a gigantic support vessel designed to make any nearby vessel work better. It is an excellent support and command vessel. It also has an emergency command center. If the vessel suffers bridge smash critical hit, its leadership is only reduced by 1 instead of 3. And structural weakness, because this vessel does have a weakness. If the vessel suffers a critical hit, add 1 to the roll in the critical hit table. So this vessel does not have any Archaeotech or Xenotech upgrade. They're right here already with the sensor dome and the emergency command center. You're automatically getting the upgrades on this ship. And what are you getting for it? A very, very good support vessel with really good launch capacity at a pretty decent cost. It's cheaper than the Styx alternative. Now, the IO class superiority cruiser at 230 points. This is what the repulsive kind of wishes it was. Now, what do you get? You get a upgraded repulsive Grand Cruiser stat line with a 10-hit cruiser, 20-centimeter speed, 45-degree turns, 3 shields, 5 up armor, and 3 turrets. It is equipped with port and starboard weapons batteries at strength 10 at 60 centimeters, 3 dorsal lances, and a strength 6 prow torpedo. It is very much designed to be a equivalent version of the repulsive with slightly longer range weapons at slightly weaker firepower. It also has Xenotech and Archaeotech upgrades. The Xenotech upgrade is Armored Prow. It gets a 6-up Armored Prow, which I'm sure a lot of Repulsive Grand Cruiser players wish it had, and it's only 10 points. And the Archaeotech upgrade, Iron Man Defense System. In a defensive boarding action, this vessel gains +2 instead of +1, and all hit-and-run attack dice rolls are reduced by 1 for only 15 points, effectively making this you could almost make this a distraction Carnifex against enemies that desire to hit and run or board it, but it makes this vessel much harder to completely eliminate from boarding actions. And a 6-up Armored Prow on any vessel like this is highly desired. Now we're into the standard cruisers. We're into vessels that are going to seem vaguely familiar in comparison to a lot of the Chaos options. So the Callisto class combat cruiser. At 175 points, what are we getting? You're getting a standard Diasporex stat line at Cruiser 8, 20 centimeter speed, 45-degree turns, 2 shields, 5 up armor, and 2 turrets. It is equipped with port and starboard weapon batteries at strength 6 at 45, port and starboard lance batteries at strength 2 at 45, a dorsal lance at 30 centimeter strength 1, and a prow weapons battery at strength 4. Now, this equipment should seem familiar to you. It's very similar to the Styx, and the Styx, sorry, not the Styx, the Slaughter, and the Slaughter is what this vessel was eventually turned into. Your upgrades are Xenotech upgrade, emergency maneuvering thrusters. You actually can find this in the ship upgrade section. But whenever this vessel is targeted by an enemy in the shooting phase, it may make a leadership check. If it passes, the vessel turns a full 45 degrees immediately away from the direction of fire. This new orientation is used for the purposes of the gunnery table. If it is done, it may not use special orders in the next turn aside from brace for impact. This may be done once per enemy shooting phase. The upgrade may be taken for 10 points. And Archaeotech upgrade, AI-assisted targeting. This vessel's lance weapons cause critical hits on a 5+ instead of a 6 for 15 points. So obviously the emergency maneuvering thrusters are meant for when the enemy gets a really advantageous weapon battery attack, but it also gives you a remarkable opportunity to maneuver the vessel into a more opportunistic position in the battle for later. This vessel becomes super maneuverable if used appropriately. And also, given that you can get a salvo of 3 lances if you're within 30 centimeters, critting on a 5 is very, very appealing. So these are upgrades that are designed to bring this vessel up to a more contemporary standard for the time and have it compete well against the other equivalent cruisers in the game. Now, I know we're talking a lot about ships that are not quite as powerful as its contemporaries. The Ganymede definitely does not. This is one of the balancing factors of the fleet to bring the whole of the fleet more up to standard with the rest of the game, because this thing is ridiculously heavily armed. The Ganymede class artillery cruiser at 175 points. What do you get? A standard Diasporex stat block with 8 hits, 20 centimeter speed, 45-degree turns, 2 shields, 5 up armor, and 2 turrets. What is it equipped with? Port and starboard strength 4 lance bays at left and right, another dorsal lance at 30, and a strength 4 prow weapons battery. Now, if this resembles the Acheron, that is because this vessel is supposed to be its progenitor, when it actually could fire all 4 of its weapons at the same time. It also is very similar to the the Adeptus Mechanicus Gothic cruiser with its strength 5 lance broadside. Now, what can it get for upgrades? Well, Xenotech upgrade is the emergency power shunt. This vessel may repair prow, dorsal, port, and starboard critical damage results on a 4+ instead of a 6+ for 15 points, which is incredible for if it's going up against an enemy that happens to have assault boats, because people are going to target this vessel to disable its weapons all the damn time. Its Archaeotech upgrade, advanced capacitors. When on all ahead full, burn retros, and come to new heading, so all of the maneuvering special orders, the vessel's firepower is reduced by 25% round up instead of 50% for 20 points. Ultimately, what this boils down to, when you move in and fire upon an enemy, you're going to be firing 4 lances instead of 3 when you are on those maneuvers. And that 1 extra lance hit matters. It matters a lot. And, strength 3 weapons battery as opposed to a strength 2. All right, moving on to the Europa-class combat carrier at 180 points. Now, this vessel is, I would say, roughly on par with its Chaos Contemporary, which would be either the Hecate Heavy Cruiser or the Devastation Standard Cruiser, and I'll show you why. So, port and starboard, it has, again, standard block with +1 turret for being a carrier. No surprises there. It has port and starboard 45-centimeter weapons battery at strength 6. Left and right, it has port launch bays of fighters and bombers only at strength 4 total, a dorsal lance, and a prow weapons battery, giving you a strength 10 salvo and 30 centimeters. So a pretty standard combat carrier. Now, what do you get as your upgrades? Well, you have the option for a Xenotech upgrade, structural reinforcement. This vessel only suffers the effects of being crippled when reduced to 3 hits instead of 4 for 15 points. This will help keep you in the game, but if you're in a campaign, just so you know, you still are counted as crippled for the sake of leadership. And Archaeotech upgrade, polarized shields. The vessel ignores the effects of blast markers in regards to movement speed for 10 points. So, again, sturdy, well-armed, and well-equipped. A good all-around cruiser. All right, the Titan-class defense cruiser at 170 points. Now, this vessel is a bit more specialized in what it's meant to do. It's meant to be a defensive cruiser, even if it's what's the word for it? Its descendant, the Murder, is far more offensive, but it has some benefits that the Murder doesn't have. So what does it get? It's a cruiser with 8 hits, 15 centimeter speed, turns 45, shields 2, armor 5 up, 2 turrets. It's equipped with port and starboard 45 centimeter weapons batteries, strength 10 at left and right, and prow lance battery 60 centimeters, strength 2, front, left, right. Now, all of you should recognize this stat block effectively as a much slower Murder. Only the prow lance battery can fire front, left, right at 60 centimeters. Now, faulty design. Whenever the prow lances fire at left or right arc, roll a d6. On a 6, the ship suffers a prow weapon damage critical hit. Now, this seems like a unfortunate option to take, but 1, it's cheaper than a Murder, and it's very unlikely for that to happen. But when it does happen, it's also really easy to repair usually because you're going to be firing at super long range. Now, Xenotech and Archaeotech upgrades. Fleet Defense Array. When in base-to-base with another vessel, this vessel grants 2 additional turret dice instead of 1 for 10 points. So, 1, you could take a couple of these in a squadron and make them pretty resistant to anything that may come and try to attack them on an ordnance level, or you can hook it up with another vessel in base-to-base, or even a bunch of them, and render them much, much better defended against any kind of ordnance. And the Archaeotech upgrade, which increases the engine speed to 20 for 5 points, effectively making it a Murder, or a slightly slower Murder, but with a better prow lance. Now we're getting into the vessels where this is not about being weak. This is about being strong. And in these light cruisers, which I personally designed because I'm crazy, the Diasporics can find a great deal of support and strength that they may find lacking in their other cruiser options. So, the Enceladus cruiser is meant to be a support light cruiser. Now, what do we get? A 6'6 cruiser, 25 centimeter speed, 90-degree turns, 2 shields, and you'll see why in a moment, 5 up armor, and a single turret. It is armed with a Strength 6 45 centimeter front left right weapons battery, so really good to use in a squadron. Shield Siphon is the special ability. Once per shooting phase, this vessel may move a single blast marker from a friendly cruiser or battleship's base within 15 centimeters to itself. This power may not be used if the Enceladus is on special orders or crippled and can only use once per round. Now, what does that mean? Say the enemy is shooting one of your vessels, and you don't want that ship to have a blast marker on its base to make it to slow it down, or you don't want it to be, if the enemy is focusing its fire on that ship, say it Nova Cannons only does one hit, but it's going to have another Nova Cannon come down on top of it, you can just take that blast marker from that ship and move it to the Enceladus, effectively taking away one shield damage on a ship and giving it full shields once more. Basically, it's sucking away the damage onto the shields to itself. This flexibility is something no other fleet has. And especially if you have a vessel like, say, a Jupiter with upgraded shields, sucking away these blast markers does a great deal to save your ships from long-range fire. Now, onto the Metis class light combat cruiser at, again, 140 points. It has the same stat block as the Enceladus with 2 shields as well. It has a prow weapons battery at 45 centimeters, strength 6, front, left, right, and prow torpedoes, strength 6, out the front of strength 6. It is, in effect, a significantly better vessel than the Dauntless light cruiser, and is designed to function as a flanker for the rest of the fleet. Excellent vessel. Now, moving on to some of their allied ships. The SETI Bulwark class cruiser at 200 points. You get a pretty standard cruiser stat line with 8 hits, 20 centimeter speed, 45-degree turns, 2 shields, 5 up armor, and 2 turrets. It is equipped only with EM disruptors. At 30 centimeters range, strength 2, front left and front right, and 3 out the front. Now, EM disruptors are similar to lances. Let's look at their rules. These weapons are similar to lances and hit on a 4+. Okay, so that's the same. When the weapons hit an unshielded hull, okay, so you're going to knock down shields first, but once they hit the unshielded hull, roll a d6 and apply the following effect. On a 1, nothing happens. No damage, no nothing. It'll still knock down shields, but once the shields are down, on a 1, nothing happens. On a 2 through 5, causes 1 point of damage, and on a 6, select a single weapon system of the target vessel and fire it upon an enemy target in range. Only one weapon system may be selected per roll of 6, and the weapon system cannot be selected more than once. This has no effects on launch bays, but can be used to fire torpedoes, Nova Cannons, or any other special weapon. The vessel forced to fire any weapon that requires reloading will have to reload ordnance before it can launch again. In effect, it takes control of an enemy weapon system and forces it to fire on its friends. This weapon, now admittedly, it's not easy for it to pull it off. You have to get that, that lucky 6, or you have to, get a lock on and get a whole bunch of hits. But when you do, you can cause incredible amounts of chaos in the enemy fleet because, say, an enemy fleet is in a advantageous position and then you fire their own torpedoes through their own fleet. Or if you manage to get this vessel on a ship with a Nova Cannon, you potentially could shoot an enemy's own ships with their Nova Cannon. So this vessel is a lot of fun to use. I highly recommend using it if you have room in your fleet. It is pretty expensive, but it is a lot of fun. Now, alien escorts. What they are equipped with are a pretty standard escort block, Escort 1, 30 centimeter speed, 90-degree turn, 1 shield, 5 up armor, and 2 turrets. They have a Strength 2 weapons battery and a Strength 1 EM disruptor. So effectively for 40 points, you're playing the EM disruptor game in an escort hull, which is much faster and a lot more flexible, but more fragile. Now, the Mercury-class scout vessel. Now, this is a very important ship, especially for playing in campaigns. This is what the Cobra eventually became. The 35-point escort are very, very specialized. It is a single hit escort with 30 centimeter speed and 90-degree turns, a single shield, 4 up armor, and 1 turret. It is equipped with a single weapons battery and 2 torpedoes. So why the hell would you take this stupid thing? Well, down here. Archaeotech sensor array. If present on the board, the Diasporex fleet gains an additional +1 leadership for enemy contacts. The effect is not cumulative, so you only get it for you only get 1 if you have to on the board. Also, the Diasporex may re-roll for initiative. Mercury-class scout vessels function as a squadron of 1 and cannot join other escort squadrons, even with other Mercury classes due to the sensor interference of the other vessel. In campaigns, this is where it's really important. You may take up to 2 Mercury scout vessels in a campaign fleet. If a Mercury is present in combat and it remains on the board at least until the 4th turn and survives the battle, the Diasporex increases its fleet rating by 1 to a maximum of 4 for the next round. If destroyed, Mercury-class scout vessels cannot be replaced. So effectively, this makes the Diasporex better in some of the more important elements of the campaign. It makes you more likely to have the initiative and be the attacker in battles, which is why these are very important vessels, even if they're fragile. So if you do take them, keep them alive. Terran Escort. This is the generic Diasporex Escort. What do we get? Okay, it's a heavy escort block with Escort 1, 25 centimeter speed, 90-degree turns, a single shield, 5 up armor, and 1 turret. It is equipped with a weapons battery at 30 centimeters at strength 2, left, front, right, and a lance at 45 centimeters, strength 1, front. In effect, these are kind of what the I believe it's not the Idolator. I think it's the Idolator. It's the Chaos Lance Escort really wishes it could be, with the weapons battery at 30 centimeters with good flexibility at front, left, right, and the lance at 45 centimeters, which is what a lot of people heavily desire. This brings in a lot of firepower to the Diasporex, which they kind of lack, especially with 45 centimeter lances. So it's a really excellent design for an escort, and a lot of fun to play with. Now, the actual fleet list. Let's see how do you actually build a Diasporex fleet. Well, let's start with the fleet commander. You may include 1 high senator in your fleet who must be assigned to a ship and improves its leadership as shown, +2. If the fleet is worth over 750 points, it must include a high senator. So 0 to 1 high senator, +2 leadership, and 100 points. A high senator has 1 fleet-wide reroll. Secondary commanders. A Diasporex fleet may take up to 3 fleet masters, 0 to 3, +1 leadership for 50 points. They have 1 ship-only reroll, and they take a second for 25 points. Ultimately, as you can see, a lot of this is about distributed command over individual ships, then fleet-wide. Now, capital ships. Command vessels. Diasporex fleet must take 1 command vessel if the fleet in fleets of 750 to 1,500 points. Above 1,500 points, you may take a second command vessel, but you must purchase a high senator to command the fleet. The high senator must be placed on the largest ship in the fleet. If both the Jupiter and Saturn are present, the player may choose. Jupiter-class command vessel, you can take as many of these as you like, though obviously you are restricted at 330 points. You can take up only 1 Saturn fleet carrier at 350, and you may take only 1 Neptune at 260. You have options of 0 to 2 Grand Cruisers. You may take 1 Grand Cruiser for every 2 cruisers in your fleet, and it's 1 to 12 cruisers. You can take as many Callistos and Ganymedes and Europas as you like. You can have up to 2 Titans, Enceladus, or Metis-like cruisers. You may take, for every 3 other cruisers present, you may take 1 Bulwark. And escorts. You can have any number of escorts in your fleet in squadrons of 2 to 6, Terrans and alien escorts, and of course 0 to 2 Mercury-class scout vessels. So, that is the fleet list of the Diasporex. Now, I'm not going to go through the campaign rules yet because they are currently in flux. I am currently playing in a campaign, and for the first time with these guys, and these are going to be adjusted to make them a little more fair. But if you want to have a look at as they are now, go ahead and have a look at the actual PDF. You can find it on the Navis Nobilite Discord server in the BFG resources area. But the Diasporex is a slightly more lance-heavy fleet. The average range is 45 centimeters. Very few things have all short range, and very few things have all long range. So when playing with them, the Diasporex function as a very different fleet, despite them being a sort of a twisted mesh of Imperial Navy and Chaos. They have a very different play style, and they have a very different overall feel to the fleet. And you're going to find that they are heavily dependent, like the Imperial Navy, on tight formations and smart squadroning. But also, you're going to find that their special rules allow for a lot more flexibility in how you play. They almost feel like a more elegant and less chaotic Chaos fleet, which is really the goal that I was trying to go for. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all again in the next video.